What if the most feel-good brand in history had one of the most disturbing stories behind it? And how does a drink become so powerful that people choose it, even when they're told they don't actually like the taste? What if the secret to Coca-Cola's success had nothing to do with the drink itself? In America, it's the nostalgic taste of a 4th of July barbecue. In parts of Mexico, it has become so deeply embedded in local belief systems that bottles are placed on church altars as offerings. To the rest of the world, it is simply happiness in a red can, a global symbol of refreshment, comfort, celebration, and safety. But look closer. In Colombia, during one of the darkest periods tied to its supply chain, some locals gave it another name, the Sparkle of Death. While the public was being sold polar bears, smiling families, and a century of feel-good commercials, a very different story was unfolding in the background. It is a story that begins with a morphine-addicted chemist and a tonic linked to the coca trade. A story where forged signatures allegedly secured control of the company, and early records were conveniently destroyed. How did sugary syrup become essential enough to gain wartime privileges funded by American taxpayers during World War II, while also continuing business inside Nazi Germany? How did one drink become tied to allegations involving polluted villages, anti-union violence, political favoritism, and billion-dollar campaigns to shape public opinion? Coca-Cola spent generations making sure you felt only the warmth of the brand, never the discomfort of its history. Today, the label comes off. The 1880s were the golden age of snake oil. Faith in doctors had weakened, and entrepreneurs rushed in to fill the gap with miracle tonics, cure-all elixirs, and scientific remedies that promised energy, relief, and healing. Most were ineffective. Some were dangerous. Nearly all were unregulated, and often sold with bold claims that would be impossible to regulate today. One of the most popular was Vin Mariani, a French drink made from wine mixed with coca leaves, marketed as a cure for fatigue, weakness, and illness. One of its biggest admirers was John Pemberton, a Civil War veteran, chemist, and morphine addict. His addiction reportedly began after military doctors treated severe war injuries with morphine, expecting him not to survive. He did survive, but dependency followed him home. Over time, it shaped not only his health, but also the way he approached experimentation in chemistry and medicine. Pemberton became convinced Vin Mariani was helping him, so in 1884, he created his own version called French wine coca. Then prohibition laws began spreading, forcing him to remove the alcohol. He replaced it with carbonated water. The drink turned bitter, so he buried the taste under heavy amounts of sugar. His bookkeeper, Frank Robinson, suggested a new name, Coca-Cola, directly referencing coca leaf and cola nut, the drink's stimulant foundations. Coca-Cola still distances itself from the idea that the original formula contained cocaine. But coca leaf ingredients remained part of the formula until 1929. That is not a conspiracy. It is documented history and widely recorded in early pharmaceutical use of coca extracts. Pemberton marketed it as a brain tonic and health drink. Sales were weak. In 1888, he died broke, never knowing his improvised remedy would become one of the most recognized brands on earth. Shortly before his death, Pemberton sold rights connected to Coca-Cola for around $2,300 to businessman Asa Candler. What happened next helped shape one of the biggest brands in history. Candler aggressively moved to buy out remaining interests connected to the company. Later investigations and historical disputes suggested some transactions may have involved forged signatures or questionable paperwork. To make matters even murkier, many early company records were later destroyed, making the exact truth difficult to verify, and leaving historians to reconstruct parts of the story from incomplete evidence. With control secured, Candler launched one of the most aggressive marketing campaigns America had seen. He covered walls, billboards, barns, pharmacies, and storefronts with the Coca-Cola logo. He mailed free coupons directly to customers. He understood that once people tried the drink regularly, repeat behavior might do the rest, almost automatically. Then came his most important strategic move. He stopped marketing Coca-Cola as medicine and repositioned it as a refreshing everyday drink for anyone at any time. In a single move, the potential customer base expanded from the sick to the entire population, a shift that completely changed the scale of the business. But Candler also made a legendary mistake. Two lawyers approached him with the idea of bottling Coca-Cola. He thought bottling was risky and unnecessary, so he signed away broad bottling rights for just $1. No expiry date, no meaningful protections, no future leverage. When bottled Coke exploded in popularity, Coca-Cola spent years and enormous sums trying to regain rights that had been handed away for the price of a cheap lunch, a decision that would shape legal battles for decades. World War II changed Coca-Cola forever. When sugar rationing arrived in America, most companies had to cut production. Coca-Cola argued it should be treated differently, claiming the drink was an essential morale product for wartime America. Through lobbying, influence, and relationships in Washington, the company received favorable treatment many others did not, a decision that strengthened its position significantly. Then, Coca-Cola made a patriotic promise. Every American soldier, wherever stationed, should be able to buy a Coke for 5 cents. It sounded generous. It was also a brilliant strategy. To make it happen, bottling plants were built around the world near troop operations. Much of that expansion was supported indirectly through wartime logistics and public infrastructure. In effect, the war helped accelerate Coca-Cola's global footprint far beyond what normal market expansion would have achieved. Soldiers introduced Coke to locals in foreign countries. For many people, their first encounter with Coca-Cola came through the U.S. military presence, often during moments of occupation, rebuilding, or transition. But there was another side to the story. While Coke wrapped itself in patriotism at home, the company's German operation continued functioning inside Nazi Germany. Its local head, Max Keith, adapted the brand to survive under the regime. When syrup supplies were cut, a substitute drink was created from leftover food production ingredients. That drink was called Fanta. Some historical accounts allege wartime forced labor may have touched parts of its production chain, though details remain debated. What is clear is that Fanta survived the war. Profits flowed back into the broader Coca-Cola system, and the brand later became a global success. Coca-Cola had managed to benefit from both sides of history. If this kind of hidden history interests you and you want more stories major brands would rather avoid, hit like and subscribe now, because the darkest chapters are still ahead. Since the late 1980s, Coca-Cola's name has repeatedly appeared in controversies tied to labor conditions and anti-union violence in Latin America. In Colombia, lawsuits allege that union leaders connected to bottling plants faced intimidation, kidnappings, torture, and murder by paramilitary groups. Similar accusations emerged in Guatemala. Workers seeking better pay and safer conditions said fear became part of everyday life, making organization extremely difficult. Coca-Cola denied direct responsibility and argued many bottling plants were independently owned operations beyond its control. That defense may be legally important, but to critics, the outcome mattered more than ownership structure. Union activity weakened. Organizing collapsed. Production continued without major disruption. In some regions, anger grew so intense that people referred to the drink as the sparkle of death. Then came environmental accusations. In India, independent tests and activists alleged toxic waste from Coca-Cola plants contaminated groundwater and damaged farmland. Villagers described water quality changing after plants arrived. Farmers claimed crops suffered. Local protests became international headlines, drawing global media attention. Whether every allegation was proven or not, one thing was undeniable. The cheerful image of Coca-Cola was colliding with communities describing fear, scarcity, and harm. The smiling advertisements continued. The accusations did too. At the same time, another problem was growing. Obesity rates were rising, and sugary drinks were increasingly being blamed. As evidence linking sugary drink consumption to obesity, diabetes, and heart disease became harder to ignore, Coca-Cola faced a serious threat. Not just regulation, but reputational damage on a global scale. The response looked familiar. Fund research, shape narratives, emphasize exercise over diet. Argue that the science was more complicated than critics claimed. Multiple reports over the years criticized industry-funded studies for downplaying the role of sugary beverages in health problems. The strategy resembled a playbook used by other controversial industries. Create enough doubt to delay action and slow regulatory pressure. At the same time, millions were poured into lobbying against sugar taxes, warning labels, and stricter dietary policies in multiple countries. Then there was the next generation. Coca-Cola secured exclusive contracts with schools, vending spaces, youth venues, and family entertainment channels. Underfunded institutions often welcomed sponsorship money. In return, Coca-Cola gained direct access to young consumers in environments where brand influence is strongest. Holiday campaigns, movie placements, collectible merchandise, and sports sponsorships further normalized the brand in childhood environments. The message was subtle but powerful. Coke belongs in happy memories. By the time many children became adults, loyalty no longer felt like advertising had worked. It felt like a personal choice. In the 1980s, Pepsi's public blind taste tests created a dangerous narrative. People slightly preferred Pepsi over Coke when labels were removed. Coca-Cola ran its own internal research. The results reportedly echoed the same problem. So executives made a radical decision: change the formula. After extensive testing, new Coke often performed better than both Pepsi and original Coke in blind comparisons. On paper, it was logical. In reality, it was a disaster that escalated far faster than expected. Consumers revolted. Thousands of calls and letters flooded headquarters. Protest groups formed. Stadium crowds booed new Coke ads. Some people stockpiled old bottles as if a national treasure had been stolen. Then, one complaint summed up the backlash: "You have taken away my childhood." Within months, Coca-Cola brought back the original formula as Coca-Cola Classic. Sales surged almost immediately, and that moment revealed something unsettling. Blind tests suggested original Coke was not the favorite taste. Yet when the red label, memories, nostalgia, family rituals, and emotional identity were visible, people chose it passionately. They were not choosing flavor. They were choosing a century of psychological association built through advertising, repetition, and symbolism. That may be Coca-Cola's greatest achievement. Not making the best drink, making millions feel that it mattered. And somewhere right now, someone is opening a cold red can and feeling exactly what generations of marketing trained them to feel. So ask yourself one uncomfortable question. If a company can manufacture loyalty that powerful, what else in modern life feels natural only because it was carefully designed to feel that way? If that question feels uncomfortable, good. Because the most effective influence is the kind people mistake for their own decision. If you enjoyed this deep dive, like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who still thinks Coca-Cola only sells soda. Because behind many smiling empires, there is a history they hope you never read. See you next time.